Hello, my name is Ben.
And my name is Josh.
And welcome back to FPL Graduates and welcome back to another video. Yes, we're going to be going through the most essential players in FPL for this season. We're going to be giving you the lowdown of all the players that you must have in your starting team.
Yeah, obviously some of these players, you probably won't be able to fit them all in, but we think that these guys are really important to have most of them in your starting 11 come game week 1. A lot of people throwing the word template around. These guys could be generally seen as template, but they're template for a reason, and we'll discuss why in this video.
But before we get into the video, we have got a massive announcement.
Yeah, big news coming from FPL Grad. So we've launched our Patreon. The link to it will be at the top of the description. Make sure you check it out. If you want your team rated, there's loads of other benefits as well. 2 tiers. Make sure you pick the right one. But yeah, make sure you check it out. Link in the bio.
Yeah, we're doing absolutely everything with this. We're doing sort of team ratings. We're doing sort of exclusive group chats. We're doing this, that, everything that you could imagine in one place. And if you have any feedback on what you want to see as a part of this Patreon, let us know as well. But yeah, that's available for you guys now.
So we're going to start from the back and work our way up. It is EDOUARD MENDY as our first essential player this season in FPL. This might throw a few eyebrow raisers about, because I know there's a lot of controversy in the goalkeeper position so far, but I think me and Ben are on the strong believers that EDOUARD MENDY provides great value at 5 million. What's your thoughts on him, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, he is the best value keeper in the game by far. And there's been a lot of people who have said, look, the 4.5 million rotation between Raya and Sanchez is better. But in my opinion, it could be a lot worse. Brentford at the back end of last season looked a lot more open defensively because they were playing a new formation. I anticipate them conceding more goals than they did last season, but consolidating that by scoring more. So I think the EDOUARD MENDY is the way to go and is must have. He's already pretty high owned for a keeper as well. And looking at those fixtures, they're tasty for a lot of save points and some clean sheets too.
Yeah, the only negative with Mendy, which a lot of people probably will bring up, is that he doesn't get a lot of saves. He was 18th in the league last season for saves, which is obviously relatively low. I think Meslier had over double his saves, which is obviously because he plays in a much worse team. Thing is, though, Chelsea are very solid defensively. They've brought in reinforcements at the back. Koulibaly has signed. Koundé might even be on his way. So these are real top-level international centre-halves that will really improve this team. What's your thoughts on the Koulibaly signing, Ben? Do you think that makes that Chelsea defence really good?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that they're not hanging about and they're going to have that defence rebuilt to as good, if not better than it was at the back end of last season. So I anticipate that they're going to be really flying out the blocks, hopefully. We know, sometimes we see new defenders in new systems for a team can struggle, but these are elite defenders that Chelsea are buying. And I don't anticipate there being problems with them settling in, especially with how good some of these signings are. Okay, so we're moving on into a defender now. Trent Alexander-Arnold should be in everyone's team, at least in my opinion. Look at the opening fixtures for him. Wow, fantastic. And he is one of the 3 Liverpool players potentially that you might have in your starting 11. His goals and assists from last season, phenomenal for a fullback. And, his underlying stats on the second half season, it bettered sort of pretty much any defender in the league. So, Josh, what are your thoughts on Trent Alexander-Arnold? He's very high ownership. Is that for good reason?
It 100% is, and it's due to his price. At 7.5 million, I would like you to show me anyone on the game that betters him in value, and I don't think it's even possible because he's just very good at scoring consistent amount of points year after year, hence why he's 55% owned. That's another negative if you do go without him, is that there's 55%, over half the people on the game have Trent Alexander-Arnold in their team. We know how explosive he is going forward. Same with Robertson on the other side. And their fixtures are fantastic. And you could probably see at least 3 or 4 clean sheets in there at a minimum in the first 5 game weeks, which give you 6 points as a basis to work off. And along with their attack and returns, the fullbacks in their system are unbelievable. So next up is a Man City defender, and it is JOAO CANCELO, priced at 7 million, and he's now the new number 7 for Manchester City as well. Really interesting number change. Obviously, a few people think he might be playing right wing next season instead of Mahrez. We're not going to sure on that, but very good stats again last season. XG very well underperformed, whereas XA was very much so overperformed. What's your thoughts on CANCELO, Ben, and is he in your team?
He currently is in my team, yes, and it's going to be difficult to fit all these premium defenders in because there's so many good ones at this 7 million price point. So it's difficult to say whether he's essential, but at that ownership, I'd lean towards yes. And that ownership is only going to rise before the start of the season, given that sort of City have 3 really nice, not just fixtures, home fixtures in their first 5 games. And JOAO Cancelo is going to be one of those guys who won't be rotated, at least not before the Champions League starts.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Marc Cucurella, if he does sign for Manchester City, how that affects Cancelo. Obviously, City tend to play with Cancelo on the left, which means he's cutting inside. Cucurella's a left-footed left back. So that sort of dynamic is going to be interesting, whether Cancelo stays on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. I'm sure there'll be a lot of rotation between Walker and Cucurella next season because they're both very good fullbacks. What's your thoughts on that, Ben? Do you think his position might change next season?
I mean, it's difficult to say because obviously Cucurella could come in as a Zinchenko replacement and play a similar role to him. But, you know, there's no doubt in my mind Cancelo's probably good enough to play in the midfield for City anyway. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see Cancelo playing a little bit further up, especially with the amount of players they've lost going forwards. I could definitely see Cancelo playing in a much more attacking role next season for City. Again, I don't see City getting sort of anyone in the positions that they've lost with sort of the Mahrez position and the Bernardo/Grealish position. I don't see anyone's sort of signing for City in those positions. So there is every opportunity that Cancelo could be played a lot further forward this season. But to start with, let's just keep him at left back or right back and see where it goes.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because a few players have actually not gone on the tour, the pre-season tour for Man City. That's Gundogan, Stones, Foden, and Laporte. So they're quite big players to miss out for City. So they're going to be quite light going into the start of the season, which means that these players should hopefully get a lot of minutes to start off with, and then maybe we'll see these guys come back into the fold.
Okay, next up, we're going to go for a little bit more of a controversial one for sort of the most essential players. We're going to go with Andrew Robertson of Liverpool. And this is a guy who's just 10% owned. So really, he's a differential compared to a lot of these guys that we've included. And if we look at his stats from last season, 3 goals and 11 assists. Compare that to Trent Alexander-Arnold, who had 2 goals and 12 assists. He's pretty much matched him over the entirety of last season. 29 starts in total in the Premier League. And again, with those fixtures, he could be one that, you know, if you go for the triple up, a double up in Liverpool with Andrew Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold could result in a massive rank increase or a sort of a rank advantage from the get-go. Josh, it's interesting to get your thoughts on Andrew Robertson because his ownership is low, his potential is high, he's very consistent. Is he one that's being overlooked slightly?
I think he 100% is, and that's mainly because that Diaz is obviously in that Liverpool team. There's no Mane there. Everyone thinks that Diaz will take up Mane's place on that left-hand side. For me personally, I just don't see Diaz necessarily getting those attacking returns that Mane did. I think he'll definitely get some attacking returns. I just don't think it'll be to the extent that Mane did. And I also think Diaz could see some rotation there. I know Jota's not necessarily played any pre-season minutes and he is injured. But we saw Fabio Carvalho. He's been operating on that left-hand side in pre-season. So I'm sure he might come in there every now and then. Also, you got to bear in mind that Andrew Robertson is £1 million cheaper than Diaz as well. So for me, if I was tripling up, I would definitely look at Robertson over Diaz. And that's why he's in this list, because a double up in their defence, those fixtures at the start, like I said, you could almost assure that there'll be 3 or 4 clean sheets at least in those first 5 games. So I think he's definitely being overlooked. Is he in consideration for your team, Ben? Or are you on the Diaz bandwagon?
I've been on the Diaz bandwagon since the beginning, but it's a compelling argument. And when you look at really the consistency of him as an FPL asset, we've seen a lot more evidence of consistency from Andrew Robertson compared to Luis Diaz. Yes, Luis Diaz had a very good second half of the season, but the sample size that we've got for Luis Diaz is minute compared to the mass sample size that we've got of Andrew Robertson and what he can produce in FPL. So I think in terms of essential must-owns, Robertson is probably up there ahead of Diaz just because of the consistency. But of course, that Luis Diaz pick is such an exciting one to go for over someone like Andrew Robertson.
Yeah, another thing to bear in mind as well is the expected data at the bottom there. Obviously, Robertson is massively overperforming in his assists, but there is a trend with that in terms of last season and the season before. So it goes to show that these top class players can overperform their expected data. We see it with Son all the time. His expected goals is always lower than his goals because he's just a great finisher. So just what that's to bear in mind if you're thinking, oh, his expected data is quite low, so I'll stay away. This is, I think, a bit of an anomaly when it comes to Andrew Robertson. So moving on to midfield, and it is the man who I just spoke about, Heung-min Son, the joint Golden Boot winner last season for Tottenham Hotspur. Again, a slightly differential option at 26% owned when we're looking at the premium options. He's not in my draft. I don't think he's in Ben's draft either at the minute. But why, Ben? Because he is literally the joint Golden Boot scorer. What's your thoughts?
It's crazy, and I think just the template shape and the template sort of how teams set up the season with the prices and that sort of thing only really allows, if you're going to be flexible, to have sort of one premium asset in midfield and one premium asset up front. So realistically, managers have got to make the decision: do I go with Heung-min Son or do I go with Mohamed Salah? And those two guys are, it's difficult to pick between the two, but a lot of managers would go for Salah over Son just because of how ridiculously good and consistent he's been. But I'd say, looking at the opening five again, fantastic fixtures. And for me right now, who's not got Son, I'm very scared of not owning him.
Yeah, I think that goes for a lot of managers. And not only Son, you can't have them all. And you definitely won't be able to own everyone in this video because you'll absolutely have 4.4 million just playing absolutely everywhere. But yeah, Son's one of those players who will probably hurt a lot of managers at the start of the season. It wouldn't be surprising if we see a lot of managers hop on the bandwagon if he went and scored a brace against Southampton, for example. It'd be an interesting one to watch if you are not going with him. But I definitely wouldn't recommend going with him because he's so phenomenal. Like we said, matched Mo Salah for goals, and that's without penalties last season as well. Let's not forget. So, yeah, a very good option for midfield.
So next up is probably the most essential player on FPL. It's Mohamed Salah of Liverpool. We've talked about him a lot on this channel, and we cannot overstate how good this guy is on FPL, especially. His consistency is remarkable, and he's probably the best FPL asset of all time. And that's a big thing to say, especially with the amount of talent that we've had in the Premier League in recent years. So at 13 million, he's got to be a guy that goes straight into your team. Realistically, probably the first one that you picked when you opened up FPL for the first time this season.
Yeah, 100%. I think over the last 5 seasons, Mo Salah has averaged 235 points a season. It's absolutely crazy numbers, like unseen numbers we've seen from anyone in the past, like Ben alluded to, about him being the greatest FPL player that we've seen. And like you see, 58% ownership. He's actually the 3rd most owned player in FPL at the minute, which I find crazy myself. Jesus and Haaland are higher owned than him at the moment. But 23 goals, 13 assists. He's on penalties. Fulham away, first day of the season. He'll be my captain. I'm sure he'll be Ben's captain too. He probably should be your captain as well. So coming up next is a very controversial one, and this will get a lot of heads turning. But I've chosen him. I don't think Ben's chosen him, and he'll come in with the argument against maybe in this debate. But I've gone with Bukayo Saka. Obviously, a very good player last season. Scored over 170 points, which is very good. 11 goals and 9 assists. And that wasn't even over expected data. He obviously got 10 XG and 8.43 expected assists. So only a slight overperformance there. Plays most of the minutes, as you can see, 38 games and only 2 sub appearances. Only 16% owned. For me personally, I think he could be a better option than Jesus, just because of the fact that we know he'll play almost all the minutes for Arsenal. He's also in that £8 million midfield slot. So if he isn't performing, or if Arsenal don't perform with their great fixtures that we have on show in that first 5, you can always take him out, move him to any of the £8 million midfielders like we have with Mount, Bowen, Kulusevski, Diaz, as mentioned before. So he's very versatile in that aspect. With Jesus, there's no one else other than him at £8 million that I would like to move to. So that's my thoughts on Saka. What is your thoughts, Ben?
Oh, well, it's a compelling argument you make, but I do not think you can go against Gabriel Jesus. I'm looking at his stats now, and over his entire career, I think this entire career anyway, yes, it is. Over his entire career at Manchester City in 6 seasons, he's averaged an XG per 90 of 0.74. That is ridiculous for a striker like Jesus. Yes, we understand that he's probably got less minutes in the tank at City previously, and he's probably scored goals off that impact sub, but he is a phenomenal finisher, and he is in an Arsenal team that is crying out for a 20 goal a season striker, which Gabriel Jesus could become. Now, I like what Josh has said and alluded to, the £8 million rotation. You can sort of dip in and out, but you can have an £8 million midfielder and have Gabriel Jesus. There's definitely flexibility to have that. So if you're sort of looking at other £8 million options that you think may do as well as Saka in those first few weeks, I think there's less options up front that you are guaranteed certain will do better than Gabriel Jesus over that same period of time. So that's why I'm probably going to lean away from Saka in this case and more to Gabriel Jesus, because I just think that you can be a little bit more flexible with your team if you have an £8 million forward and a midfielder in there. So next up, we have got the highest owned player in the game. It's Erling Haaland. And wow, 64% owned is unprecedented levels at this point in the season. We could expect that to go up or down. It really depends on sort of other players' performances in pre-season and his performances in pre-season. We haven't actually seen him play for Manchester City yet. So it's sort of a case and wait and see that he is essential, because we all know what he's like up front. He is a phenomenal finisher. So let's hope and see if he can get some minutes in the bank.
Seen a lot of people get turned off by Erling Haaland at the start of this season, mainly down due to his injury concerns and people thinking like, oh, he's unproven in the Premier League. Is he going to cut the mustard? But at 65% owned, I'm not sure if you can take the risk on really some just drab excuses not to select Haaland. His injuries, maybe not the best, but he still played over 2,000 minutes last season for Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga. And also, you know, he's proven in the Champions League. He's proven on some of the highest stages in world football. You know, scoring goals against the likes of Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga. So I don't think that is really an excuse. I can't see him personally failing at Manchester City. Their team and Guardiola's system is much better than what he was playing in Dortmund. So I can only see him going from strength to strength. And again, I would not take that risk at 65% owned to go without him compared to someone like maybe Harry Kane or Heung-min Son.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a difficult one, because again, if we don't see Haaland in preseason, that's probably the only excuse and good enough reason to potentially not have him. We've got the advantage of knowing if he's going to be fit for the season when we get to the Community Shield as well. So it's worth bearing that in mind too. But for now, Haaland is definitely an essential player.
So they are the most essential players in FPL. Let us know who you think is essential and who you have in your team. It's going to be interesting to see how our teams change over the next couple of weeks before game week 1. It's not too far away now. And like Ben alluded to, that Community Shield is going to be a very big sticking point for those Man City and Liverpool assets.
Yeah, we're really not far away from the start of the season at all. The hype is starting to build with FPL, and we hope you are looking forward to more content that we've got around the corner. Yes, guys, as you now know, as we said earlier on in the video, we're running a Patreon, so feel free to check that out. We've left that in the description as well. And as per usual, please remember to follow us on all of our socials, like the video if you liked it, and comment below, you know, any essential players that you think should be in our teams. And as usual, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later.